how do we get to this squatting position? Alex knows that what his feet placement will do will tell how his back comes out when he squats, if it's in a straight or if he's bent over. So now we put our hands up. We start with our feet about shoulder width apart. That's a good starting position. Now you squat down and squat back. Now you'll notice Alex's hands are going straight down and his feet are in the same position. So if he does a couple of reps like this, you'll see feet where they're at, knees are in the right position, fingers are in the right position. His back is going straight down. One more rep. Now, we know that Alex knows where this is supposed to be, so what we want to see is what happens when he turns his toes in just a centimeter. Okay, now let's see what happens to his upper body when he squats. Now you'll notice how instead of going straight down with his feet just another centimeter in, his hands are coming forward, which means his back is twisting. Try another rep like this. Now watch the way his back is bending over when his feet are in this position. Now, if he turns his toes back out a couple of centimeters the way they were before, now let's see again. Hands straight down again. So now we're back to the correct position. So that's the number one variable that you have in squatting. The number two is how far are the feet apart. So now if we move our feet in, say 2 centimeters, just that little bit will show you. Now let's go squat down again. Notice how the back twists over and then back up again. So now we know that the feet are too close together. So now if we go back out again to the normal position, okay, Alex knows where his feet position are. Now when he goes back down and squats back, the arms are straight down again, and it means the back is straight. So now you can see from this how to find your correct feet placement. One of the biggest myths that we ever get in squatting is put your heels up on a board or weights. This myth arose from the old-time bodybuilding days when bodybuilders were really short. So what they had to do was, if they squatted with their feet flat, they would get a bigger butt. And they didn't want that, so they wanted to find a way to squat so it would put more pressure on the front of the legs. The problem with that is that you put a lot of pressure on the knees, and not every person can stand the pressure on their knees. So you'll see when we squat now, in this position, the heels up, how far forward the knees go. So what this does is it puts all the pressure from the squat and from your lower back. You'll notice here the lower back is bent over too. All this pressure goes on your knees. So this is definitely an improper way to squat. And if you do it this way, in sports for instance, what sport do you play when your heels are up on something? So now you're changing the neural patterns of how your body works. Plus you're putting extra pressure on the knees. So our advice is learn to squat correctly with your feet down, learn the distance apart, and you'll get much better results. One of the problems that comes up when you're squatting is your heels coming up when you put a lot of weight on. This is one of the reasons why people try to put something under their heels. This is not the way to correct the problem. What happens is when you squat, if your ankles aren't flexible enough, your heels will come up, forcing your body forward. This just means that your ankles don't have the flexibility and your body's not used to squatting down. So what you're doing is you're forcing your knees forward, which again puts a lot of pressure on your knees, puts a lot of pressure on your lower back. So because you're not comfortable with squatting correctly, what you would squat back, as soon as the weight goes up, your body isn't used to this method, so you tend to move your knees forward and your heels come up to get your balance. Another thing that happens when you squat is when the weight starts to get heavy and you can't handle the weight in your legs, you'll start to round your back because now your lower back becomes the weak link. Now this has been a big problem with squats for years, is the fact that a lot of the pressure from the bar and people trying to squat too heavy, they bend over in their lower back because what's really giving out is the lower back and not the legs. So you really just have to understand, if you're going to do the squat motion, you have to learn to do it correctly, and that the weak link in the weight that you can use may not necessarily be your legs, but it might be your ankles, or it might be your lower back that forces over. So again, keep in mind that during your learning the motion, sometimes the weak links crop up that you're really not used to. In squatting for sports, we've shown you in this squatting films that when you squat normally, you squat the top of the legs parallel. The issue with this becomes is you have to be a little bit more advanced to learn this motion. So for sports, what we suggest is all you need to do is go till the legs are 45 degrees. Because at this position, it's plenty of strength for sports, it's a lot easier to learn, it's a lot less chance of injury in the squat because you're not going to be able to put so much pressure on your lower back when you're doing the motion. So in sports squats, this is plenty far enough to go in the average athlete.